Once upon a time, in a land where trouble ruled, a little girl searched for hope, for life, for school. With just her school bag on her back, she ran towards the river, but she could hear them all around her. What pain would they deliver? Her heart pounded faster, and she knew she'd have to fight. So she grabbed a ruler from her bag, and she fought with all her might. With her spirit lifted, the first battle had been won. But she could hear the clouds building, the next was still to come. As war went all around her, she knew she'd have to hide. So she took out a book and she quickly climbed inside. The words washed over her and under her, becoming a thick shield that the bullets couldn't penetrate. The ink just wouldn't yield. The path was now clear, and her resolve was even stronger. But her journey stretched ahead of her, seeming ever longer. To cross the dark waves of despair, she knew she'd have to fly. So she used what she could find and continued way up high. And as she flew, she looked ahead and could see her journey's end. A glowing room, a brilliant blue, a school she could attain. With her feet back on the soil, the path was open wide. She sprinted to the open door and quickly rushed inside. A chapter completed, her journey now won. But the story isn't over. In fact, it's just begun.
Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, our program is about to begin. Please take your seats.
Can you please take your seats? If you could find your seats, we would greatly appreciate that. Good morning, my fellow guests, Link sisters. Please find your seats. Thank you. Good morning. Please find your seats. Thank you, so we can begin our program. Thank you so much. Good morning. Please find your seats. Thank you. Good morning, my fellow Link sisters, esteemed guests, and friends. I am Valerie Wardlaw, Chair of Events, Conferences, and Assembly Planning for the Links Incorporated, and I'm honored to be with you today and to welcome you to our 2019 Legislative Luncheon. We are so glad you're here, and we're counting on you to help us transform our communities through our voice, our vote, and our power. And thank you so much for coming. We have been working diligently to bring you an insightful and informative program this morning. Our goal is for you to walk away feeling empowered to incite change and to give you a better understanding of the challenges currently facing our communities. I am so excited to share that we will be live streaming today. In fact, we're live streaming right now. We wanted to make sure that all of our members, near and far, are able to participate in this special occasion. I encourage you to please follow us on social media. On Facebook, at The Links Incorporated. On Instagram, at The Links Inc., and on Twitter at Links Inc. And if you're posting today, and we saw you taking lots of lovely photographs, don't forget to use our hashtag Links Legislative Luncheon 2019. Now, it gives me great pleasure to invite Karen Jefferson Morrison from the Columbus, Ohio chapter, who serves as our National Chair of Legislative Issues. She will bring recognition to our partners and our corporate sponsors. Thank you, Karen.
Good morning. And thank you, Valerie. We appreciate all that you did to organize this event, so thank you for your hard work. On behalf of the Legislative Issues, Public Affairs, and Resolutions Committee and my co-chair, Shawnese Washington, I thank you all for joining us today, and I'm thrilled to see so many of you here for our third annual luncheon. Our Legislative Luncheon has always been the occasion where we share our advocacy strategy, and we take time to have a deliberate conversation and discussion about issues that are important to us and to our communities. And this year's event is no different. Today, we will engage in a much-needed dialogue with our national president, Dr. Kimberly Jeffries Leonard, and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, U.S. Rep for Massachusetts 7th District. In this conversation today, we'll discuss how we can leverage the power of our voices to educate, engage, and mobilize voters and stakeholders in all of our communities. We pride ourselves in impacting the communities that we serve throughout the Links Incorporated, and we intend to continue activating our membership of more than 16,000 women to promote voter engagement and advocacy. And we hope, and we know, we don't just hope, we know that our efforts will be reflected as we head to the polls, not only in November, but every time that you go to the polls to vote. So before we move on, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our partners and our corporate sponsors. Their generosity made this day possible, so I thank you to AARP, Dove, Fort Lincoln Newtown Corporation, Pfizer, UNICEF, NAACP, the National Medical Association, Congressional Black Caucus, and the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Colgate-Palmolive, American Cancer Society, Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, League of Conservation Voters, Ohio Health, OWN, Pennsylvania Convention Center, Philadelphia, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, the Black Women's Agenda, Edelman, Ethel Isaacs Williams, March of Dimes, and Salam Enterprises. Please join me in congratulating and thanking all of our partners and corporate sponsors. Now I have the distinct pleasure to welcome to the stage a woman who is fearlessly leading the Links Incorporated on a journey to impact, change, and transform communities, both locally and globally. From AARP, Dress for Success, UNICEF, to improving relationships between the police and the communities we serve, our national president is boldly leading the membership to reach new heights, leaving an even greater impact on those who need us most. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our national president of the Links Incorporated, Dr. Kimberly Jeffries Leonard.
Good afternoon. It is my honor to stand here before you today and bring greetings and welcome you to the third annual Links Foundation Incorporated Legislative Luncheon. As the 17th national president of this beloved organization, it is a privilege to be present during the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Annual Legislative Conference. There is no better place to be than here, surrounded by the best political and forward-thinking minds of our time. It is truly a joy, and I'm talking about you all. As Links, our commitment to being here allows us to reconnect with and reconnect to our legislative partners. Additionally, we have the chance to reconfirm our hard-fought responsibility to the election process as a means to transforming communities and fulfilling the purpose of our organization. We are living in politically complicated times, and it is imperative that we demonstrate our concerns by casting our votes and demanding that each vote counts. This moment in time is critical to our democracy. Brown children are being warehoused at our borders. Back-to-school shopping is now a family activity to be feared, potentially leaving the most vulnerable scarred for life. Food insecurity is real. Poverty remains a problem, and environmental racism is on the rise. But with all of that, I believe that there is a bright light at the end of this long, dark tunnel. As women of color, we possess the power to alter the electoral landscape and to change the course of history. We've done it before, and we can do it again. Just think about how far we have come. We survived the chains of slavery. We withstood Bull Connor's dogs, and we earned the right for equal education. We demanded our rights and insisted that they be civil and that they be just. And then We elected a record number of women to Congress, including some of our Link sisters. So yes, we are here and we are still standing. And what I know for sure is that our voice, our vote, and our power matter in ways that are yet to be quantified. We are the difference makers. That is why we are assembled here today and have joined in a collective spirit to challenge and better the democratic process. This legislative luncheon allows us to raise important questions and to elevate a national conversation concerns impacting communities of color. And we are blessed to have here with us today generational representation from some of the country's top policymakers and change agents. Today, we will be honoring civil rights icon Congressman John Lewis, Democrat from Georgia's 5th District, and presenting him with the Link's Trailblazer Award. We also have newly appointed North Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice Cheri Beasley, who is not only a Link, but she's my homegirl. She will receive the Link's Presidential Citation. We are so proud of their work and what they have done to advance the causes of what we hold most dear. We owe them a debt of gratitude for their hard and consistent work to pass laws and legislation that benefit us and those who live on life's margins. Congressman Lewis and Chief Justice Beasley, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here today. We will have other elected officials joining us as well, and they will be introduced later. If I can leave you with anything that resonates, know this: our vote determines elections. We should not leave here today. Our vote determines elections. We know that. We've seen it happen. We should not leave here today without some tangible steps to accomplish that task. Talk to the people at your table. Find out what they do and how they are impacting their neighborhoods, their places of work, churches, and schools. Let us leave here and go back into our communities more mobilized, exert the influence that we have, and educate citizens and get out the vote. We have incredible political muscle, so let's use it. As people of color, I recognize that we are not monolithic and we don't think within the same box of ideologies, but we can start a revolution with a small r. It's incumbent upon us to exercise our right to vote, and no matter what side of the aisle that we inhabit, what we do in this moment is very crucial. So I thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and I thank you for your commitment to transforming communities through our voice, our vote, and our power. Now, before we go any further, we're going to get started with our program. As Links, we are the legacy keepers of a distinct and significant history, and we don't have to look far to find examples of excellence. In our midst today, we have a prime example of a woman who has answered the call to uplift and transform our communities while making history, and her name is Cheri Beasley. She is the first Black woman to be appointed to the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. I already told you she was my homegirl, so I don't want to have to say that again. Chief Justice Beasley began her 20-year judicial career as a district court judge in Cumberland County, North Carolina. Prior to her appointment on the bench, she practiced law in the 12th Judicial District's Public Defender's Office, where she tried cases ranging from misdemeanors to capital murder. After 10 years of service on the district court bench, she was elected to serve as an associate judge on the North Carolina Court of Appeals, making her the first African woman elected in a statewide race. As you can see, Chief Justice Beasley is a woman of many firsts. Her commitment to serve North Carolina and her residence extend far beyond the halls of justice. She has worked tirelessly, mentoring students and judges while promoting the rule of law, the administration of justice, the importance of an independent judiciary and fair judicial selection. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to confer upon Chief Justice Cheri Beasley this Presidential Citation in recognition of the contribution that she has made to the state of North Carolina and beyond. Chief Justice Beasley.
Link, Kim, thank you so very much for this amazing honor. Thank you to all of my Link sisters here. I am just so truly honored to be able to be here and to share with you a bit about serving as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina. I want to thank the Triangle Park chapter and the Fayetteville chapters in North Carolina, who I love dearly. I want to thank my husband who's here today, who we never could have imagined 20 years ago that this would be our journey, and so I'm so grateful for his love and support. I am the 29th Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina, which means that I leave the Supreme Court of North Carolina administratively mostly. We hear the same cases and all that. I'm also proud to tell you that we have the most diverse Supreme Court in the country. There are 3 African Americans, 3 women, and 1 Jewish person. But I also lead the judicial branch of government, where there are nearly 6,500 folks, elected judges and DAs and clerks of court in 102 courthouses across the state of North Carolina. I always speak the names of the 3 African American women who have served as Chief Justice across this country. There have only been 4 of us in the history of this country. Chief Justice Burnett Johnson is currently serving at the Louisiana Supreme Court. Leah Sears was the first African American woman in this nation to serve as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Georgia. And then Chief Justice Peggy Quince of Supreme Court of Florida. All of us Links women. It is not at all lost on me that this is the court's 200th anniversary. And you can imagine what the Supreme Court was like 200 years ago. And we're determined not to go backwards in that way. I've been excited over the last 6 months that I've had a chance to modernize our courts. For young folks here, I will tell you, we still have DOS systems in North Carolina, which is kind of frightening. So we're changing all of that since I've become Chief Justice. I'm adding more substance abuse courts. We've all heard so much about the opioid crisis, but the reality is we've been in crisis for a really long time. And it's time for us to do something about it. And so I'm also adding faith and justice roundtables, where we're partnering with faith communities across the state of North Carolina and really thinking about how important it is. When people come to places of worship and they say that they don't have a place to live, they often don't think about the legal ramifications of that. And so to have clergy persons to be able to hear that and to refer those to folk to the places that they need to be, we're really excited about that as well. Wherever you live, I'm going to ask you this, please, as our president talked to us about the importance of voting and selecting people who care about our needs and our issues. Please insist that your judiciary be independent. There are national groups working very hard to take over state Supreme Courts, and they've been very, very forthcoming about that. Please make sure, and that's why there have only been 4 African American women to serve as Chief Justice. It's very, very expensive to serve. So please be mindful of that. Please know that wherever you are, more than likely the Chief Justices and the other justices on the court are elected or appointed in some way, and you ought to be a part of that process. So I'm truly honored to serve in every way. I thank you, Link Kim, so much for your support. She was at my investiture when I became the Chief Justice in March of this year. And in all things that we do in LinkedIn, we are so serious about doing it greatly, and I thank you for all that you do in support of greatness in communities across this nation. Thank you, and God bless you.
I am now pleased to call to the podium a remarkable woman, a praying woman. She's got several books out, and she's getting ready to have, her film has been released recently. But when you hear her pray, you will know why we asked her to come today. I am asking Cheryl Polite Williamson to please come and give us our invocation.
Let us bow our heads. Most gracious and heavenly Father,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm pleased to know you're enjoying the afternoon. Our program will resume in 2 minutes, so please take your seats. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you all, if you wouldn't mind, we're going to get started. A couple of very special announcements. First of all, I want to bring your attention, I don't know if you can see it, to this amazing pen that was given to me by my link sister, Janine Rousson. And this is what we're doing. Our voice, our vote, our power. And this is what they've worn to their state capitol day. And I am so very honored to receive it. And I'm so very honored that you took this theme and took it to the Capitol. Thank you, Link Janine. I also want to make another introduction. Congressman Butterfield is here from North Carolina, 4th District. Not only is he doing wonderful things, but he is an heir of Link. And as he likes to tell me, the Southern area started in his kitchen because his mother was a charter member of the Wilson Rocky Mount Tarboro chapter. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for honoring your mother with your presence. This past April, I had the distinct honor of meeting and conversing with the legendary civil rights icon and Congressman John Lewis. He had written a letter recognizing the accomplishments of the Links Incorporated and our place in history, writing, "This organization's commitment to integrity, courage, and accountability is essential to bending the moral arc of the universe towards racial justice." I was humbled then, and I remain humbled now as I have the great honor of returning the favor and saluting him with our Trailblazer Award this afternoon. Congressman Lewis is rightly regarded as one of the most courageous persons to emerge from the civil rights movement. He has dedicated his life to protecting human rights and securing civil liberties. He participated in the Freedom Rides to challenge segregation in interstate transportation across the South. Despite being severely beaten by a violent mob and arrested during the Freedom Rides, Congressman Lewis continued to rebuke the injustice of Jim Crow segregation. In 1963, I was one, he was named chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and served as a keynote speaker at the historic March on Washington. He was 21, correct, Congressman? 22, 20, very, very young. Over time, he became known as one of the Big Six leaders of the civil rights movement. He coordinated the 1964 Freedom Summer Campaign, a nationwide call for volunteers to register black voters in Mississippi. The following year, he spearheaded one of the most seminal moments of the civil rights movement. On March 7, 1965, Congressman Lewis led 600 peaceful protesters across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, bound for Montgomery. But we know that that march was cut short when Alabama state troopers brutally attacked the crowds in what became known as Bloody Sunday. That event hastened the passage of the Voting Rights Act that same year. Despite more than 40 arrests, vicious attacks, and life-threatening injuries, Congressman Lewis remained dedicated to the philosophy of nonviolence. He also remained dedicated to the cause because at 79 years young, Congressman Lewis shows no signs of stopping. And we are so very thankful for all that he has done and all that he continues to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join me in welcoming to the stage Congressman John Lewis. Congressman Lewis, we are very pleased to present to you the Links Incorporated and the Links Foundation Incorporated Trailblazer Award for the work that you have done and will continue to do in the civil rights movement. Thank you. Okay.
We're going to take a picture.
Hello, everybody. Oh, you look good. Beautiful. House full of good-looking women. Just beautiful. You all dressed up. Thank you. Madam President, thank you for allowing me to come by. Thank you for this great honor. I'm delighted and very pleased to be here with my colleague and my friend, Congressman Butterfield from the great state of North Carolina. Thank you. You know, I've been to North Carolina a few times. I think we met in North Carolina on one occasion, at least one, right?
Yes, sir.
I love being in your presence. I love the sign that you had up talking about the power of the vote. And I know the role that black women have played in the past, and I know the role that you must play in the days to come. I don't want to be partisan here, but I just want to tell you, we got to save our country. We got to save democracy and save this little piece of real estate for generation yet unborn. There are forces in America trying to take us back to another time and another place. But we must stay together. We've come too far. We made too much progress, and we're not going back. We are going forward to create one America. For we're one people. We all live in the same house. The American house, the world house. And it doesn't matter whether we're black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. We are brothers and sisters. Something is wrong in a country when we take little children, little babies, from their mothers, their fathers, and place them in cages. That's not right. It's not fair, and history will not be kind to us if we continue to go down this road. You must continue to speak up and speak out. When I was growing up in rural Alabama, I would ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents about the signs that I saw, saying white waiting, colored waiting, white men, white women, colored women. They would say, boy, that's the way it is. Don't get in trouble. Don't get in the way. But one day I heard of Rosa Parks. One day I heard of Martin Luther King Jr. And I met Rosa Parks when I was 17. The next year at the age of 18, I met Martin Luther King Jr. And I got in the way. I got in trouble, what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. And as women of color, you must continue to get in trouble and redeem the soul of America for generation yet unborn. I just returned from a trip a few weeks ago from Ghana with some of my colleagues, mostly women, about 4 or 5 of us men. And we went into the dungeon. Went in the doors of no return. And I cried. We all cried. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, went with us. And we all cried together. What happened in America, what happened in Africa, and what is happening now in America, we got to stop it. You can stop it. So the election is coming up. You know, Madam President, only thing I did, I just gave a little blood on that bridge in Selma. But some of our people gave their very lives. They died for the right to vote. So those of us that live today and will be living during the next few days and weeks and months, we got to go out and vote like we never, ever voted before. There's power in the vote, and we must use it as a mighty instrument, as a mighty tool to save our nation. And maybe, just maybe, in saving our nation, we can help save the planet. I say from time to time that we have a right to know what is in the food we eat. We have a right to know what is in the water we drink. We have a right to know what is in the air we breathe. So let's go for it, okay? Thank you very much, and may God bless you.
Wow. We want to thank Congressman Lewis again for stopping by. I know his schedule is so busy. We want to thank Congressman Butterfield for stopping by. I'm going to let you all continue your meal, and then we will be resuming our program very shortly. Thank you.
An act of giving up something of value for something else that is deemed more important and worthy. Unfortunately, there are communities across America that are being sacrificed for something not so noble and not so just, but for oil and greed. My community is one of those unfortunate communities that are being sacrificed. Port Arthur, Texas. I was diagnosed with asthma and allergies at the age of 6. But it wasn't just me who had asthma and suffering and couldn't breathe. It was my friends and family as well, who we were worried about all the time. But that was our life. That's what we, that was just normal for us. Port Arthur, Texas is home to the largest oil refinery in the United States of America. Since it is such a large refinery, we're always emitting benzene and other carcinogenics into our environment all the time, which puts us at another issue on the front line of climate change. By current projections, my hometown will be underneath water, or almost underneath water, by 2100. In 2005, Hurricane Rita hit my hometown. But what hurricanes do is that they erode that natural marshland barriers. So then Hurricane Ike hit in 2008, And then by the time Hurricane Harvey hit in 2017, that marshland was basically gone. So that water had nowhere to go but in my hometown went underwater. So it was this very wide swath of all of these refineries just closing down really fast, putting all this pollution and, again, cancer-causing agents into our air, our water, our environment. We'll never know how much the environment got affected that day. This is why I and my amazing coworkers are fighting what we are fighting for right now. Our communities are worth fighting for.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few more introductions.
Ladies and gentlemen, our program is about to begin. Please take your seats.
I'd like to call Kelly Richardson to the stage, please. For our Crown Act update. Is Kelly Lawson? Okay, she's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we've done as the Links Incorporated and as members of the Links Incorporated has been being very purposeful in how we use our voice in social justice issues and in the social justice space. And I'm very pleased to be able to give an update and call to the stage Kelly Lawson of the Joy Collective to tell you a little bit about one of the very first things we started in this administration. This is her second time with us at this luncheon. And I want to just publicly say how much I appreciate her support and Dove's support of the Links Incorporated as you see the boxes here around the table. But I'm going to just ask Kelly to come and tell a little bit about our partnership, the work we've done, and the work she's done. Kelly.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sis. You're beautiful. Thank you. Hello, hello. What a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I've seen some of you over the past year, and as Dr. Jeffries mentioned, we started this journey about a year ago, and we were here in this room at this luncheon with so many beautiful faces and so many esteemed leaders. And so I'm just delighted to be here on behalf of the Dove brand as CEO and founder of Joy Collective, which is a Black-owned, women-owned agency just right up the street here in DC. And some of the work we do is really about giving back to our community and supporting us, right? We focus on things that are going to help us, Black women. So I'm going to show a little video. It's just a minute. And then one more thing I'd like to do. If you could play the video, please.
We are born in this world with so many doors closed already.
There's one thing for us to say what beauty looks like. There's another thing to make sure our beauty is welcome in all places, all institutions. There's a systemic, institutionalized bias and discrimination that exists against us because of our hair.
People have discriminated against me because of my hair.
Where is the justice when Black men and women are denied access to economic advancement because of their natural appearance?
Moments ago, we passed off of the California State Senate floor the Crown Act that says all of us who wear our hair in its natural form won't be discriminated against in school or the workplace.
I'm glad to be associated with the Crown Coalition to make it clear that racial discrimination based on natural hair and hairstyles is prohibited in New York State.
And I want to thank everyone that it took to make the progress that we have and the progress I know to come. There's so many people to thank.
Exactly. So first and foremost, I want to just say this. None of this could be done without the powerful sister that you saw on that screen named A.C. Eggleston Bracey. She runs a $5 billion enterprise at Unilever. I've known her for about 30 years, and she's been there only about a year and a half and came into that job and said, I want to do something really impactful to make a difference, number one. She gave us a chance as a small Black agency to come in and do some good work that we all know how to do as Black women. Number two, there is a team of people at Joy, Black women, these folks up here are just a handful of us. Ajwa Asamoah, who's done amazing work with us. Thank you, sis. And Orlina Nwoka Blanchard, the president of Joy, and then a phenomenal team. There's tons of people behind this And so I want to just publicly thank the Joy team for the last year of work. And then I want to really say, it has taken a village, right? These organizations right here have stood with us. You see the coalition co-founders at the top, but people like Dr. Kimberly Jeffries Leonard was the first person to say, I want to stand with you and help you, and I want to get the links behind this. So I want to say thank you so, so much for your support and all of the links in this room. And you can see, so I really, really appreciate you and love you like a sister. To the people like Delta Sigma Theta, my beloved sorority, even though I'm wearing your lovely pink and green colors, I'm so sorry. But the Deltas, Madam President Beverly Smith came on board with us. We also have the beautiful and fabulous Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So thank you. We're all sisters in sisterhood and service, and I appreciate that. We have our sisters from Jack and Jill, and I appreciate you so, so, so much as well. And I'm not going to spend the whole time. I know we have a program to get back to, but I just want to have you pause and take a look at these organizations here. These are people that we reached out and said, we need your help. We need your support. We need you to galvanize your members and just help us get the word out. So I just want to pause and say thank you, thank you, thank you to all of these organizations. And we want to have hundreds of people up on the screen. So if you're interested in supporting us, there's two things you can do. Two things right now you can do. One, exercise our power and our vote right this second by taking out your phones and signing the petition at thecrownact.com. Some of you in the area conferences over the country may have done this, but if you have not done it, I urge you to do that right now. That's a vote we can do right now in exercising our voice. So please, please, please sign the petition at thecrownact.com. It takes about 30 seconds, and at the end of it, it will send that to your local legislator. And we have 2 states down. We have New Jersey coming right behind us in the next several weeks, hopefully. We have Michigan and Tennessee and all kinds of states following in the lead of New York and California. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you want to join the coalition, much like these fabulous organizations have done, which we appreciate, you can simply reach out to any of the fabulous people at the Joy Collective, myself or Orlena or Aja or any of our team members. We're sitting back there at 36, but we would be glad to work with every single person in this room. And so thank you so much for having us. Thank you for your support. Dr. Jeffries, really appreciate you. And every person in this room, we deserve to have the right to wear our hair however we choose to wear, whether it's a fabulous blowout or some locks or Bantu knots or whatever that may be. We deserve that right. So please exercise your power, your voice, and your vote right now. And thank you so much again.
So, we've come to the point in our program that I know you've all been anxiously awaiting. An important discussion, an important conversation, or shall I say linksversation, about our voice, our vote, and our power. Coming to the stage, and who will share the stage with me as we delve into this and other issues, is my link sister and freshman Congresswoman from Massachusetts, Ayanna Pressley. Hey, sister.
How are you, Madam President? Thank you.
You can have a seat. We are so pleased that you are joining us. We know you're very busy, and we just appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us this afternoon. But before we jump into our conversation, I hope you all will indulge me and allow me to brag on our link sister just a little bit. Thank you, my sisters. Last November, Congresswoman Presley made history, becoming the first Black woman elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But our sister is no stranger to firsts. In 2009, she launched a historic at-large campaign for the Boston City Council, and she won, and became the first woman of color elected to the council in its 100-year history. That's to be applauded. On the council, Congresswoman Presley worked in partnership with residents, advocates, and other elected officials to enact policies to combat the inequities and disparities facing her community. And if you don't know, Congresswoman Presley was also one of the New York Times 14 Young Democrats to watch. And we're watching, and others are watching too. And we want him to watch. Ayanna, Congresswoman Presley, welcome again.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So I know that you've got a lot to do today, and I don't want to waste time. And I know our audience is waiting for us to delve into this linksversation. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the things you've done and the things you see and the things you would like to do. After taking the oath of office yourself, you returned to your district and led your supporters in a community pledge, making your constituents partners in realizing change. The community pledge read as follows: I will be bold. I will take my seat at the table of government and create space for others to take theirs too. I will celebrate a diversity of perspective. I will seek solutions in partnership with those most affected by the issue, bringing those closest to the pain, closest to the power. I will inform joy, as joy is necessary. It's an act of resistance. I will stand up for humanity of every member of this community. I will challenge apathy and cynicism by showing up for the around me. I will do my best every day to build a more equitable and just community for us all. So having said that, and having had your community take that pledge, how can we inspire the communities we serve to feel hope and begin working to make the changes for the better?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is wonderful to be in community with you and to be in fellowship with my sisters. And I just want to take a moment to give credit where credit is due. This is an incredibly surreal, serendipitous, and full circle moment in that many don't know that I was an aide on the federal level for 16 years. So I worked on the House side for former Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy II for 4 years, then for United States Senator John Kerry 11 years, and then served on the Boston City Council for 8. But I began as an unpaid intern in the office of what was then the Massachusetts 8th Congressional District. And that 25 plus years later, I now have the humbling honor of being the Congresswoman and being a part of the Congressional Black Caucus, the conscience of the Congress, with these esteemed and dedicated thought leaders and public servants who are seated right before me, and also my Link sisters. It is an incredible honor, and I thank you for your sisterhood and for your mentorship and for your example. The pledge that I did in partnership with community, I did that because my mother, may she rest in power, taught me many lessons, but two that I'll lift in this moment. The first is that there's a difference between your job and your work. My mother held many jobs to make ends meet. She was also a tenants' rights organizer. She was a social worker. And those were meaningful and impactful, purpose-led jobs. But she said there's a difference between your job and your work. So your job is what you do to pay the bills. And your work is the work of the upliftment, the empowerment, and the advancement of community. And that work is not only for those with commas and fancy titles after their name. That work is the work that we must do in symbiotic partnership with one another. And so I was it was important to me to return to the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District, specifically to Roxbury, to do this pledge in partnership with community because we have to do this work together. Now, it is challenging because we find ourselves in unprecedented times. We are truly at an inflection point. There is a great polarization in the country, and it does feel as if we are drinking from a fire hose daily of insult and assault to our senses, to our humanity, to our democracy. And it threatens not only our rights, but our joy. In this moment in time, I just want to salute and celebrate everyone, because you can claim one victory already today, and is that you were bold enough to show up in the world and to navigate it exactly as you came into it. And that is a victory, because in this climate, when your existence is the resistance, that is not an easy thing. And so I want to underscore joy, because again, in our community pledge, I asked all of the community members, 400 plus people, to say, I will inform joy in my life and in the world, because that is a necessary act of resistance. When we are in a climate, when there is an administration that is coming for our civil liberties, for our civil rights, that is coming for my self-agency and autonomy over my body, what I will not give them is my joy. And that is so important, because due to the inequities and disparities disproportionately borne by our community, which didn't just happen, they were created by policy. When you grow up marginalized and systemically oppressed by legislated discrimination, when you grow up in the residual aftermath of Reaganomics, of redlining, of the war on drugs, of welfare reform, when you are living in underbanking and credit invisibility and the criminalizing of the bodies of Black women and the objectifying of our bodies, when all of these things are going on, it is so important that we each demonstrate bold activist leadership and that we keep our joy. I once had the honor of meeting Dr. Maya Angelou. Now here is a poet, an orator, a professor, an academic, a wordsmith, and I gave her a piece of paper and asked her to sign her name. And under her name, all she wrote was joy with an exclamation point. Out of all the words she could have written, that's what she wrote. And so I need each of us to demonstrate activist leadership. And what does that look like? What does that mean? Well, first, I need all of you to make sure you are counted in the census, okay? Because in the eyes of the federal government, if you're not counted, you don't count. And if you're not counted, what that means is that the federal government does not see you, does not hear you, and is not investing in you. And you are worthy and deserving of investment. The Massachusetts 7th Congressional District is an incredibly vibrant and diverse district, and one of the most unequal in our country. In a 3-mile radius from Cambridge to Roxbury, life expectancy drops by 30 years and median household income by $50,000, a 3-mile radius. So we are in these inequities and these disparities, and we are under-resourced because we are undercounted. And the census is about making sure that you are counted, that the people that count in your lives are counted, and this is funding for public education, community development block grants to build more affordable housing, for language access, for Medicare, for Medicaid. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is inform joy in your life and in the world, because that is an act of resistance. Secondly, I'm going to ask you to make sure that you are counted in the census and that the people that count in your lives are also included in the census. And just because I'm being greedy, I want to acknowledge also personal pet peeve and mission of mine is to address prison gerrymandering, because in my district, 1 in 4 children have an incarcerated loved one. And most of these private prisons are in suburban communities. And so we know we disproportionately bear the burden of mass incarceration. So imagine this: the bodies of men and women, overwhelmingly Black and brown women, are being counted according to where they are being warehoused. And those federal dollars are going to invest in those communities. When incarcerated men and women should be counted and included in the census according to the home communities of which they were from, that have been traditionally under-resourced, which created an ecosystem whereby they could not thrive. And then the third action item that I want to give you, because I can't just offer platitudes, that's why I'm trying to be specific and granular here, is I want to enlist all of you as foot soldiers and accomplices in honoring the good work of my sister in service and fellow committee member and the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee under Financial Services under the great leadership of Chairwoman Maxine Waters, and that's to get Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. Because representation does matter. You know, I appreciate the applause and the solidarity when she said I was the first black woman elected, first woman of color to the Boston City Council, and then the first person of color and black woman to represent Massachusetts in the House of Representatives. That is a pathetic commentary. Don't clap on that. It took over 100 years to elect the first woman of color to the Boston City Council, and it took us 230 years to break the concrete ceiling of Congress. So we have many more miles to travel to realize leadership parity when it comes to gender, race, and ethnicity in the corridors of power and at policy and decision-making tables, but we are on our way.
Thank you, my sister. You know, this room will do what we can to make sure that we take your charge, and we are working to get that Harriet Tubman on that bill. What can we do to address education inequality and student debt, removing them as barriers to success for our youth?
Sure. Well, I'm so grateful that you asked this question. This is the first generation that will not do better than their parents, the first generation for whom home ownership will not be in their reach. And of course, layered on top of that, we know that this is historic lows in terms of black home ownership, the lowest since the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968. And so when you layer on top of that, black folks usually take out private loans, are more likely to default on loans, and what that does to your ability to, your purchasing power, your opportunity to build wealth, to create a life. We even see a rise in suicides characterized by debt despair. So we are dealing with a crisis. Again, I thank our chairwoman, Maxine Waters, on the Financial Services Committee for her leadership. First time in the history of that committee that we had a hearing, a full committee hearing on what is a $1.4 trillion crisis. And we cannot get the director of the CFPB or the Secretary of Education to call it a crisis. But it is a crisis when the average borrower is saddled with a minimum of $30,000 worth of debt. And so that is choking again at people's ability to create a life. People are alive but not living. It's impacting the professional choices they make. It's impacting educational choices. It's impacting whether or not they build a family. It is choking at the promise of our communities and of our country. And so I do want to say that I support bold solutions such as one-time student debt cancellation. And I'll tell you why, because we have got to, when the problems are this embedded and this systemic, and I do want to share some numbers with you, the burden of this debt is disproportionately borne by black borrowers who have to borrow 85% more student debt than white students. And then we represent black folks, black and brown folks, 90% of the defaults. So we have got to offer policy solutions that address the scale and the depth of the problem. So I support one-time student debt cancellation, which would jumpstart our economy. But the reality is if we did that tomorrow, people would still have, if they defaulted on their loans, and again, because we borrow 85% more, and we represent 90% of the defaulted loans, because we are also preyed upon by deceptive business practices and predatory marketing of some of our for-profit colleges and universities. So we are disproportionately impacted in that way as well, that you would still have for 7 years that poor credit score, which is tied to everything. And so this is why I've introduced the Student Borrower Credit Improvement Act, and I thank my colleagues on the Financial Services Committee for helping to get that reported out, where it will allow for private borrowers who are often left out of the equation of flexible repayment plans and forgiveness, where you take into account disruptive life events, which happens to all of us, and also says if you pay 9 out of 10 in that repayment plan that's developed, 9 out of 10 of those payments on time, that it's erased from your credit history.
Wow.
Yeah, but we do have to be bold, and I'm calling upon. We have 3 main drivers of our economy in the Massachusetts 7th: financial services, higher education, healthcare, and I'm asking all of these employers to consider offsets in what they provide their employees. We do that here in Congress, and that's incentivizing for more people to come and to work in public service. We'll never be able to pay them what they invest in serving the country, something that's comparable, but that's something that we offer as an offset to help them in paying back those loans. But we've got to do something because it is choking at our economy, it is choking at the promise of our country.
Thank you so much. Now, this is a hard one. The country is doubting whether Congress will enact gun laws, despite the rapid rise in mass shootings. We all have seen it, we all feel it. What is it that we can do? What can be done to spur our elected officials to take action and change our ineffective regulations?
Okay, so I do think ultimately all of our challenges, so we were just talking about student debt, if the government can bail out banks, then they can bail out people. So if they can bail out banks, then why aren't we bailing out young people so that they can save, so that they can get an education, so they can build wealth, so they can purchase homes? So all things are solvable. One of the things we learned in financial services, our first full committee hearing was on homelessness. And Chairwoman Waters put forward legislation called the End Homelessness Act, and it was scored at about $13 billion that if we prioritize housing first, that we could end homelessness, $13 billion. Guess what else we could do? At the equivalency of that amount, we are spending for a military aircraft carrier, okay? So this is about choices. We could end homelessness for $13 billion, or we could purchase another military aircraft carrier. And this is not in any way being negative about the military, it's just about the choices that we make. And so when it comes to gun violence prevention, it is a matter of political courage and will. And I do think it's critical, and I'm enlisting you as activist leaders, to please hold to narratives and challenge the media and challenge your elected officials that this dialogue can not only be about mass shootings. There is no hierarchy of hurt. And so we need to hold space for 2 narratives. So we could tomorrow pass a universal background checks. The House is doing their job. The Senate is not. In a minute, I'm gonna give you Mitch McConnell's phone number because that's another action item. But, we could tomorrow pass universal background checks. We could tomorrow pass a ban on assault weapons. New Zealand had a mass shooting, and within days, they banned assault weapons. So this is about political courage, leadership, and will. And we also have to, again, hold space for 2 narratives. Whether we are robbed of a life, and please stop saying we lose people. We don't lose them, they're stolen. So whether we are robbed of a life on a city block, gang affiliated or not, or due to domestic terrorism as a consequence of white supremacy, in a mosque, at a church, at a school, at a concert, every life is of value. There is no hierarchy of hurt. And so in addition to doing things like passing universal background checks and banning assault weapons, we also need to address straw purchasing and gun trafficking. And I want to give it up to my sister Robin Kelly in Illinois for her leadership in that fight. And we need to join her in that and support her. And then finally, when I served in the Boston City Council, I helped to create the first committee, which still exists in perpetuity, the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, the first committee in the history of that city council to name trauma. And I'm actually, one of the proudest things in my 7th-month tenure as a freshman Congresswoman is that thanks to the support of Chairwoman Cummings, he did support my call for us to convene the first hearing in the history of Congress in oversight and reform on childhood trauma. And it is growing. And so what I know about trauma is that for every person that we are robbed of in community-based violence, you are affecting a minimum of 20 people. And so Joyce Beatty and I and others, we're doing our work on financial services so that we can pass along generational wealth. But until we get there, you know what we're passing along? Generational trauma. And it manifests and it shows up in many ways. And so when we talk about gun violence, do not forget the surviving family members of homicide victims. I do believe the people closest to the pain should be close to the power, driving and informing the policy making. This work has got to be survivor-led. It has got to be victim-centered, and it has to be offender-sensitive. Given the unique dichotomy that we often bear in our communities of an equal number of both perpetrator and victim. And so what I'm working on is a Survivor's Bill of Rights that includes surviving family members of homicide victims. And it is about trauma supports and healing and justice and improving clearance rates, because the insult to injury is you're robbed of your loved one, then there's never justice, right? And so these are some of the things that I'm working on. And in fact, I want to thank the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Massachusetts 7th. We have our own mothers of the movement. Louis D. Brown Peace Institute, Tina Cheri, Kim Odom, so many others who've been leading in this fight. And we established a National Survivors of Homicide Awareness Month in Massachusetts. And I've introduced legislation to do that nationally, so that people, when the headlines move on, we don't move on, because we remind people that this is about more than statistics. This is about lives, people of flesh and bone who loved and were loved. And we need to name them over and over and over again. And this is why we need a National Survivors of Homicide Victims Awareness Month in our country.
Powerful. So for my last question, you touched on this a little bit when you talked about prison warehousing. But there have been many approaches to prison reform, which has been discussed, which includes changing sentencing for drug offenses. Sure. What is the best approach, in your opinion, to reducing racial biases, which send a disproportionate number of African Americans to prison each year?
Well, the first thing I would say is please pay attention to our courts. You know, we talk about, you know, this sort of, there's been this coordinated attack, this slow, you know, tsunami of hurt that's been brewing, and our courts are a part of that. And I do support the efforts that have been introduced, and I thank Hakeem Jeffries and Cory Booker and others for their leadership around sentencing reform. I also want to acknowledge the work that we're doing in the name of cannabis justice. That might be an uncomfortable subject here, but it is an industry. And we have to make sure that folks that were disproportionately locked up because of the war on drugs are not locked out of a multi-billion-dollar industry. But I do want to say this. I am the child of a formerly incarcerated parent, and I'm not unique in that. As I said, in the Massachusetts 7th, 1 in 4 children have an incarcerated loved one. And families do the time with their loved one. You know, that trauma is great and stays with you. And so before we talk about prison reform, I don't want folks to lose sight of the real goal, and the real goal is decarceration. Because we need restorative justice. And folks like my father has gone on to do incredible things. He's a professor of journalism. He's a published author because he got sober, but he had to be incarcerated to get sober. And what we need is more on-demand treatment, culturally competent treatment. My father experienced great trauma in his life. And he was self-medicating, and this is true for so many people. So we have folks that are incarcerated, and this has become a multi-billion-dollar for-profit industry. And people that are battling mental illness, substance abuse disorders, or committing crimes out of poverty should not be incarcerated. And furthermore, and I want to thank our chair, Karen Bass, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, for her leadership around the foster care system, because it has become a pipeline to the criminal justice system. So we have got to address our foster care system. And later today at 4, I will be queuing up some work that I've been doing nationally with Dr. Monique Morris from the National Black Women's Justice Institute to address the criminalizing of black girls in our schools and the growing school to confinement pipeline. In my district, a black girl is 6 times more likely to be suspended or expelled and put on a pathway to being justice involved than a white peer. And this is based upon policies in our schools and our learning communities that on their face appear to be neutral, but have a discriminatory and disparate impact, where our girls are being body shamed, when they are being criminalized simply for how they show up in the world, for how their hair grows out of their head. And so before we talk about prison reform, and there's great legislation out and that I support, like the dignity of incarcerated women that was introduced by Rep. Jayapal, we need to focus on restorative justice, disrupting the school to confinement pipeline, and prioritize decarceration while also being dual track in addressing prison reform and the need for thoughtful, comprehensive reentry. It is disingenuous for us to say, knowing that the main driver of recidivism is unemployment. When you come out, get ready to legitimately make a positive contribution in the world, when in my district, 30% of men and women, when they are released from correctional facilities, these for-profit prisons, they are being released to shelter. And because of housing policy, we are not supporting the successful reunification of family because many have family members residing in public housing and people cannot return to their families for fear of losing their home. So we have got to have comprehensive, thoughtful, humane-centered reentry that prioritizes housing because that's foundational to everything else. And then finally, I have introduced federal legislation to abolish the death penalty because I think there was no place for it in a just society, and we know how many, because of the criminal injustice system, how many folks are incarcerated and on death row that are in fact innocent. And my legislation also proposes a resentencing and getting away from a life sentence without parole. That is a death sentence. So we are really missing out on the contributions. I just want to say this as we close, because that was your last question, right?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That was a real question, not a statement. Okay. I'm an Aquarian. We're heavy-handed sometimes. Okay. So shout out to all my Aquariuses. Okay. All right. But what I wanted to say is that when I ran for Congress, I think ultimately why I have the humbling honor of being the Congresswoman today is because we challenge conventional wisdom and narratives about who deserves a seat at the table of democracy. And before we engaged in the politics of transaction and asking someone for their vote, we sought to engage in a politics of transformation. And so we asked people, tell me your life. Tell me your struggle. Tell me your ideas. Tell me your innovation. And we did things like engage 250 incarcerated black men behind the wall of MCI Norfolk. I want to shout out the AACC there for the incredible work that they do. They had a debate watching party, endorsed our campaign. And those 250 black men organized a minimum of 3 family members from the outside to go to the polls on election day.
Wow.
That is what is possible when you don't make assumptions about who desires and deserves a seat at the table of democracy. And so any criminal justice reform agenda that I have is directly informed and shaped by the people closest to the pain because they are worthy of being engaged as co-legislators, and they also deserve, and I will end here, a right to the ballot. They deserve a right to the ballot both while they are incarcerated and when they re-enter. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this Linksversation. This is not a one-off. I hope we can keep the conversation going. And I do want to do a special shout out to my Link sisters in Boston. Thank you so much for your sisterhood and your friendship. And thank all of you for your civic engagement and your partnership and your activist leadership. And I do want to give you Mitch McConnell's phone number before we leave.
All right.
Somebody please tweet this.
We
And
have
please
our social media chair. She will be
call
ready to tweet it.
Mitch McConnell and tell him the House has done their job and we need him to do his on every issue. But gun violence prevention is gun violence is a public health crisis and epidemic in urban, rural, and suburban communities, and he needs to do his job and pass gun legislation. And Mitch McConnell's phone number is 202-224-2541. Don't get nervous, y'all. Listen, give him a call and let him know the squad is big.
I just want to take a moment to thank our link sister, Ayanna Presley, for joining us today, having this Linkspiration. We know what she's doing. We're watching too, and we are behind you.
Thank you.
And you have given us our charge, and you have given us our marching orders.
And thank you I want to say this, thank you to all of my Link sisters and Connecting Links for your solidarity in the face of the attacks that we received. Thank you for keeping us prayed up and keeping us covered. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Now we have our marching orders. I'm going to call Karen Jefferson Morrison to the podium.
Should I stand?
Yes, stay. Okay. Absolutely.
Thank
to
you,
introduce
everyone.
another one of our
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Madam President and Congresswoman Presley. Thank you very much. And as we started this program, our goal was to inform, educate, and activate. And so you've heard a lot about what the public policy issues are. Hopefully you've gained a greater appreciation for the issues and what's at stake. And so moving forward, you may ask yourself, well, what's the call to action? And so none other than my Congresswoman, my homegirl, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, I'd like to introduce her. She represents the 3rd Congressional District, which is in Columbus, Ohio. She's dedicated her life to making an impact and delivering results through her service. In Congress, she's had numerous pieces of legislation signed into law, including 2 measures, one to combat human trafficking and another to empower college students to make more informed financial decisions. She was tapped to chair, as you heard, the newly created Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee on the Committee of Financial Services, and she also serves as the vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. And if you haven't heard, just this week, the United States House of Representatives unanimously passed Beatty's signature piece of legislation, the Beatty Rule. If enacted into law, this legislation, not if, when it's enacted into law, this legislation would require that at least one gender-diverse candidate and one ethnically or racially diverse candidate would be interviewed when there's a vacancy among the Federal Reserve Bank presidents. So congratulations on that. This is historic. It gives me great pleasure to introduce one of our own, a Link, one of the hardest working Links and Congresswoman on the Hill, and my best friend, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty.
Good afternoon, and let's give it up for our Link Legislative Chair for the Links Incorporated, Karen Morrison. To Madam President Kimberly Jeffries Leonard, to all of the Executive Council, to my Link sisters. I've been charged in 3 minutes to do 2 things. So let me do the first and acknowledge all of the members of Congress. Congressman G.K. Butterfield was here, and it is important for you to know that G.K. is the co-chair of this year's Congressional Black Caucus Fund's annual legislative conference. Now, everyone knows that there's always someone when you come to Congress or you come to any organization and you're new. that you look for guidance, you look for spirituality, you look for wisdom, and you look for the truth. Well, she's a Link sister. And I was smart enough to sit next to her in the Congressional Black Caucus meetings for 7 years. Let me also tell you, not only is she a Link sister and a member of Congress, but she is the chairwoman of the Science and Technology Committee. No other one than our very own Link sister, U.S. Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson. And let me just say to you, on behalf of all 7 of the Link sisters in Congress, thank you for what you do, and thank you for being my mentor. I am a better woman. I am a better Congresswoman. Thank you. The other Link sisters are all featured, but you also need someone who is new that comes to the table. And let me just tell you, there are not enough words for me to say how proud I am of the sister we just heard from. And so let me say, Congresswoman Link Sister Presley, you brought it today as you do every day in Congress. And I'm just saying she sits on my committee. So I like that as the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion. Well, let me just sum it up in our charge, because we have to own it. It belongs to us. Think about why you are here. Think about 16,000 members strong, 288 chapters, 41 states, District of Columbia, Nassau, Bahamas, and the United Kingdom. Our charge. Think about today. 55 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, representing almost 80 million people, and 17 million of them that we represent are Black. Think about what you did today in honoring the Honorable John Lewis. So you see, if you put together our history as links, and if you put together our history as 55 strong members of the Congressional Black Caucus, it equals partnership. It equals our strength in numbers, and it parallels with our theme today when you think of our voice, our vote, and what? Our power. That is what our charge is, my sisters, to use our voice to get people to vote, and that gives us Black power. Black power. So let me put it all together for you. Today you embarked on history by honoring John Lewis. John Lewis for civil rights, John Lewis for voting rights. That got us the young, the bold, matched with Martin Luther King, who was his junior member. That got us Rosa Parks, that got us Dorothy Heights, that got us Dolly Adams. That's what power does. And it got us the rest of the national presidents, Madam National President. So the question should be, what do we do with it? So the answer to that is, you put it all together in the words of what Congresswoman and Link Sister Presley said. Get people registered to vote. Your voice is your vote. When we look at what we need to do to unwrap and unpackage and harness then what we discover. What is it? Disparities, discrimination, disproportionate amount of service. So how do we do it? We piggyback on our missions with the Congressional Black Caucus. We make a statement that we come back 1 year from now, and we don't talk about a plan, but we reveal what we have done. Criminal justice. We've already heard the data and the statistics. So let's lead with that, because every Black family has a doctor, a lawyer, a PhD, and boo-boo, and bobo, and Shaniqua. So let's not forget that. That's who we are. Take ownership to us. So voting, criminal justice, and ownership. It does not matter where you started out, but look at where we all ended up. And I know we didn't all start out in a room like this. And so, health care for all, quality and affordable education, support your HBCUs. Many of us would not have gotten here but for a sister or a brother standing up or someone telling us about the black universities. Because for many of us, that was the only place you could go. So our charge is quite simple. For us to establish a partnership, for us to have a resolve that 1 year from now, we will not be talking about the statistics and the facts. We will be talking about our resolve. Our resolve, criminal justice, voter registration, which means civil rights and human rights, education and health care. Because if we do that, let me just simply say to you, we put a roof over a family. We feed a child. We educate our brothers and sisters. So in the words of Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it's done. Well, my sisters, our work continues because it is not done. And I am Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, and I approve this charge. Now they want me to do this, no? Are you going to do that? Somebody handed me that.
No, just wait a moment.
Okay.
Do that in just a minute. We love our Congresswoman Beatty, do we not? We love our Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, do we not? And we love our Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, do we not? And so there was I come from the South. My mama's sitting right there, and I've been raised by old people, and they say, give me my roses while I'm alive. And so we have a few roses for our hardworking Congresswomen on the Hill, because there's nothing that we can do or give you that really can compensate for all you do every day fighting that good fight, especially now. And so we just wanted to give you these tokens of our appreciation. Congresswoman Johnson, will you please come up? Congresswoman Pressley. They will not wilt. They are steadfast because they're made of steel, just like you are. And we want you to take them and remember always that your Link sisters are behind you and we have your back.
You gonna say it? Because somebody told me to say this. You gonna do it? Okay. It gives me great pleasure at this time to ask our National Vice President of the Links Incorporated and my dear friend, Link Ethel Isaacs Williams, and you may applaud.
Let's give it up again for the Honorable Joyce Beatty, the Honorable Eddie Bernice Johnson, the Honorable Congressman Presley. Has this not been a good time? Has this not been a good time? Do we not thank our chairs? Do we not thank our leader, our 17th national president, for continuing, for her vision, and for a wonderful afternoon? So I'm going to move a little hastily, but not so much, because there are some really important people that I have the distinct pleasure and honor to recognize that are amongst us this afternoon. First of all, you are our VIPs, all of you. You've traveled near and far to be with us. You gave of your treasure. You spent your afternoon, and we believe that you're going to leave a little bit more empowered and committed to use the voice, the vote, and the power. So thank you for being here. But we are an organization of over 16,000 that was organized 73 years ago. This is our 73rd year. And so the organization that Sarah Strickland Scott and Margaret Roselle Hawkins built, started, it's really in good hands. And that is because we've had great leadership from then to now. I'm going to call the name of some of those leaders of our organization who are with us this afternoon. And when they stand, I'm going to ask them to not just raise their hand, but to stand. And I want you to greet them and acknowledge their presence warmly and appreciatively. They are none other than first our 8th national president, Dr. Dolly Dazelle Adams. She is the president that had the vision to make sure we have a house. And so 1200 Massachusetts Avenue is because of the vision of this past national president. Give it up again for past national president Dolly Dazelle Adams. Then we have in our presence our 13th national president, none other than Gladys Gary Vaughn. Give it up for one of DMV's own. She did many things, but one thing that's part of her legacy that will live on and is alive and well today, she had the vision to make sure that we are paying it forward, that we are developing the best and brightest leaders. And so under her leadership, the Scott Hawkins Leadership Institute was formed. Give it up for our 13th national president. By the way, Scott Hawkins, cohort 8, are you in the house? We have okay? They're our current. So cohort 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you're in the house and you've been through that Leadership Institute, will you stand? And then I have the great pleasure of our 16th national president to introduce her to you. She is none other than Dr. Glenda Newell Harris, our immediate past national president. And as a matter of fact, it was under her vision that this luncheon came to be. So thank you for the vision of the Legislative Luncheon. And then, of course, we operate in areas. We have 4 dynamic areas. And so as I call their names, I'm going to ask their leadership to stand also. And I'm going to begin in the east, where the sun rises, and the birthplace of this organization in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's our Eastern Area Director, Dr. Shawana Tucker Sims. Will you stand? Will the leadership, the Eastern Area officers, will you stand with the area director and all other leadership members of the Eastern Area? Will you stand and be recognized? Thank you. And then we move on to the soul of the nation, the soul beat, where the soul food stems from and everybody's grandmama came from. None other than our Southern Area Director, Sylvia Perry. Will you stand? And will the officers of the Southern Area as well as the leadership team of the Southern area. Will you stand and be recognized? And then we move on to the Heartland. And they love to call themselves the Heart of Links as well. None other than our Central Area Director, Monica Allen. Will you stand and be recognized? With the leadership team, including the officers of the Central Area, will you please stand and be recognized as well? And then it wouldn't be complete without a beautiful sunset. And so in the West, they say they're the best. Come on, Western Area Director Lorna Hankins, will you please stand? With the officers of the Western Area and the leadership team of the Western Area, if you're here, will you please stand? I think they had the longest commute, don't you think? From Alaska to Texas. Wonderful to have you. So we have some others who are with us. This is a foundation event, and so each area elects a foundation representative, and so we want all of the foundation, the Links Foundation Incorporated Board of Directors, including our area foundation representatives. Will you please stand? And because we are in Washington, D.C., you know, we don't officially have clusters, but we have clusters. And so the DMV, I know you're in the house. Those members, those Links members who are part of the DMV cluster, will you stand and be recognized? We thank you for your support. We thank you for what you have done to make sure that we had a near sellout crowd. Thank you, DMV. And then all Links, because this is a mixed company, so everybody in the house may not be in the organization, but they support, and we really do love and appreciate them. But so that they know who we are, Links members, will you please stand? You traveled near and far. You gave of your treasure and your time, and we are appreciative. And I think it's a few connecting links, so if the connecting links would please stand, because we sure enough lean on them. The Chief Justice has her connecting link. I happen to have mine too. And you should clap because you got one somewhere. He's on the way. He's on the way. Let me move quickly to a close. We do have, I do want to recognize, although they are mentioned in your program, our other Congressional Link sisters, and we thank them for their service. They are with us in spirit, and they're on the front line. And that's, we've already acknowledged Eddie Bernice Johnson and Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, Congresswoman Ayanna, but we also have Senator Kamala Harris. We have our Link sister, Congressman Val Demings, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Give them an applause in their absence because they are with us. We have also from the Secretary of State for the District of Columbia, Kimberly Bassett. Kimberly, where are you? Would you please stand and be recognized? From the Mayor's Office, we have Jennifer Porter in the house with us. Will you please stand and be recognized? Thank you, Jennifer. And from AARP, our long trusted and true partner, we have the Senior Vice President, Edna Kane Williams. Will you please stand? Thank you, Edna. I think I've covered everybody. Who's on the front line? Who are the elected officials that are members of our organizations? Because you too carry this banter, the mantle that we've asked. Do we have any that are elected or appointed, past or present? Would you please stand? If you're members of the judiciary, will you please stand and be recognized? These are our women of power, our Link sisters. Madam President, I know I'm to bring you back up, but as you come this way and before I turn it over, I want to ask that we really take a moment to take in what you have experienced and know that it takes a leader to move. So I want you to, I got it, they're giving me my cues. I want you to acknowledge the way we do for a leader. You know, if we, even down the street at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, they would say, the President of the United States. So I'm going to say, much better, more graceful, intellectual, and all of that, and a bag of chips. Our president, our 17th national president of the Links Incorporated and the Links Foundation Incorporated. Will you please stand to your feet for our president, Kimberly Jeffries Leonard. She can't take the mic yet because there's one more thing special. You may be seated though. We're having a little surprise. You know, she travels in many circles. She sits on many boards. She serves us well, not only as Links, but as Black women. She serves us well in so many sectors. So where she goes, we go with her. And so one of those organizations thought it not robbery to come. And I'm going to ask at this time a special presentation will be made by Dr. Glenda Glover. She is the international president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Lynn Kimberly. Will all the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha please stand? On behalf of the 300,000 members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority International, we present to you these pink roses, and we certainly hope they will brighten your day. Thank you.
And then please charge it to my head and not my heart. Those who you have elected to serve at the national level, our national officers that are here with us today, and they're always here with us. Our National Recording Secretary, Crystal Kendrick. Our National Treasurer, Ethel Bowers. Our National Parliamentarian, Tina Davis. And will all the members of the Executive Council of the Links Incorporated, would you please stand? You can do better than that. They serve you well, and they work very hard. Please stay standing, Executive Council. Madam President, we would not want to let the day go by without also giving you flowers while you may smell them, enjoy them, and let the essence of the rose linger long after today.
Wow, okay. I was not expecting that, and I just want to thank my executive council, and I want to thank my Link sister, Dr. Glenda Glover, who is my supreme basilisk. And so thank you so very, very much. I just want to say as we close that this has been a very impactful day, and I hope it has been impactful for you. I hope you have heard the charge of our Link sisters, and I hope that you know what you need to go do now, because our voice is our power, our vote is our power. I want to take a moment and thank the committee that planned this amazing event, and I want you to thank them. Karen Morrison, who is our legislative chair, her co-chair, Shawnice Washington, our amazing national chair of events, conferences, and assembly planning, Dr. Valerie Wardlaw, these phenomenal awards under Denise Gibson Bailey, our awards chair, her co-chair, Vanessa Baker Latimer, and our phenomenal communications team, Rosalind Frazier, Kimberly Sweet, and Shalanda Lobin. These are the women who really did help to plan this, in addition to our phenomenal headquarters team under the leadership of our executive director, Christy Patton Foster. Please give them a round of applause. Our fantastic sponsors, I know you have been thanked, but I just cannot end this without thanking you again, AARP, Dove, Colgate, all of the sponsors that you see. We so much appreciate not only you supporting this event, but allowing us to support the policies that you support, because these are the issues that impact our communities. So as I close, I'm going to ask everyone to stand. You have been charged, you have been inspired, I hope, and it's absolutely fitting that we end this legislative luncheon by singing the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
With our harmony
Thank you all so much. And thank you for coming. And please enjoy the gifts from our sponsors, Doves, and we have gifts outside for you from Colgate. Thank you.